Yeah, we are not cool enough yet to do video podcasts. I am perfectly happy just being like the Metatron. I'm going for the voice of God thing here.
That's okay. Most people listen anyway.
Right? I accidentally did that to one of my coworkers. He didn't I have East Coast habits. So I sign on to stuff early, right? And or at least like when my thing goes off, like I'll sign on. And I don't turn my screen on because a lot of times for me it's like 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. And I had this whole thing for like a year when I was in Utah where I just like the internet was not stable. So everybody's like, yeah, don't turn your video on because I'd often lose the call entirely, right? So just out of habit, everybody's used to me never having my video on. So I'm like, sweet, we're going to roll with that. But so I was logged in and he must have logged on and just logged on to like the big conference screen. And he must not have noticed that I was on the call. So he comes in, he sets up the conference thing. I look up, I'm like, hey man, how's it going? And he jumped so high. And I was just like, he's like, holy crap. I was like the voice of God through the speakers. And I'm like, that's right. Because I know everything.
So funny. Can you hear me okay? I really just am on my cell phone.
We are going to make it work. Okay. So we're just recording and we're going to roll with it. And that's how, when have we ever not just winged it, Meg? Like, it's been about 2 decades of us just figuring it out as we go. Why not this?
Right on.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, so we are talking today to Meg Ebba, who, as you may have already picked up, is someone I have known for way too long. And we're going to talk to her about what it's like to homeschool your children. Because COVID aside, you inadvertently have done this almost end to end, man. You got a couple that are getting ready to graduate, right?
I do. 2 years. I'll have one. Oh my gosh. Yeah, she's a junior this year and then a graduating senior. Yep.
There you go. So as you might guess, Meg and I have known each other for way too long. We accidentally went to the same high school together and did not realize that until after high school. I think, were you 3 years ahead of me or a full 4 years ahead of me?
I think only 3 years, but true story. Yes, we became friends after high school and then found out we went to the same high school.
Which I think creeped everybody we knew out.
It was really funny.
Because double full exposure, Meg and I met each other through the joy of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer official posting board. No shame.
Yes, we did. When the internet was a young, innocent lad skipping over the hills.
And we were all afraid of dropping the blink tag because then for whatever the remainder of that 4-hour block was, everything under the dropped blink tag would blink.
Yep.
Pour one out for the blink tag. I feel a little bad when it got deprecated, but it became way less risky to use the internet.
People listening should know that the blink tag is when we actually used to have to type our own HTML to make things like bold and italic and we knew all kinds of things back in the day. This knowledge is lost to time now, but we knew it.
It's so weird because thanks to the Buffy the Vampire Slayer boards and my use of the internet back in ye olden days, people are weirded out when I tell them, oh, I started as a designer, but I was a designer who could code, which oddly, like half my career is the fact that I can talk to both sides of the table. And I have owned in professional settings that I learned to code on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So the weirdest thing for me at Fox, like in terms of, it was like looking at your own high school reunion. The weirdest for those of you that, we will get to the homeschooling in a minute, but for those of you who are not as familiar with fandom as we are, it is not unusual for fandom to have gatherings, which now are like, that's what cons have become, like just somebody just productize the whole thing. But long ago and far away, we accidentally started an annual charity event with the actual Buffy, Angel, Joss Whedon groups, like, which was, of course, before the whole thing with the thing and we all found out what was going on set, which seriously, Joss. But so I don't know if I told you this, that when they were doing, can't remember if it was, I think it may have been the 15th of no, maybe it was the 20th anniversary. They were prepping for that at Fox. And all of a sudden, one of my coworkers from home entertainment who knew my background because I contributed to marketing in the past. She's like, hey, can you come take a look at something? I'm like, sure. It was footage from our parties. Remember how people used to walk around with cameras? Some of those people were people from Fox Home Entertainment, and they literally were asking me how many of these people do you know and are in contact with still, and do you think you could possibly get releases for us? I kid you not, Meg. Do you know how creepy that was? I was like, please don't let me be in any of that. Yeah, it was super weird that at one point I actually was in charge. I had the keys to the kingdom for the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and all of the Whedonverse fan pages fell under me. All of Fox's official stuff. It was crazy.
That's so funny. See, you thought you were doing a fun thing, but it turned out to help you in a future job, which you never know what the experiences are going to give you.
Oh, dude, there's nothing like revealing yourself as a bronzer to Joss Whedon after you've invited him to come talk at your MBA program, and then letting him know that you're in charge of all the pages, which he found hilarious. 2017, the days of ignorance bliss.
Yeah. But we could segue, because we did not know each other in high school, but we did go to the same high school.
We did,
which is kind of how. And did you know any homeschoolers growing up?
I didn't. I was always taught that
I didn't either.
Were weird people. So yes. So
there were no homeschoolers in our circle at all. Nobody came in to the high school for I'm just going to take chemistry, or I'm just going to do sports. We didn't have that in our experience.
Yeah.
And in our high school, it was assumed, at least when I was graduating, that you would either go to college or the military.
Yep.
The trades were not at all offered. I mean, there was a shop class, but that was a little sketch, which was too bad because the shop teacher was fantastic.
Was the clock? I think the clock watch was junior high, the big wooden clock.
That was junior high. But the shop teacher at our high school was fantastic, wonderful man. And I wish I had taken shop classes, but that just wasn't the experience. We didn't have homeschooling. And this was though back in the 90s, when in the 80s and 90s, there was a questionable legality on homeschooling. No laws had been written to protect it or get rid of it. And every state was just doing kind of what they wanted. So if there were any homeschoolers, they were flying under the radar anyway back then. And it's just much different now.
That's what I figured. So that was kind of one of the things I wanted to ask you about. But let's walk back to kind of who you are and your background as a person. Yes. They can't see you making the wacky noise, the wacky finger gestures, but remember the whole part where we said we weren't going to do video?
It's true. That was just for you then, the little wacky feet.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's walk back to let's start with you as a person, because you were a person before you became a mom.
Indeed. And still am, shockingly.
I know. So what is your background? You did have a college degree. You do have a college degree, right? I just realized you had no idea. So why don't you talk dude, it's one of those things where you've known your friend for so long that you're just
wait, what do you do for a living? I can't ask you. Do you have parents?
Tell me what my day job is. You have no idea. No, it's fine. For those of you that cannot see, Meg is just openly laughing at the camera because she's like, yeah, I don't know what you do.
But I love to hear stories about it. There are no better office stories than from Kathy. Absolutely. I just wait for it like it's gossip straight from the water cooler. I don't even know any, she's been in so many incredibly interesting positions with people and places. And I'm like, no, wait, are you kidding me? Tell it again. Anyways. Okay.
I just remember back in ye old LiveJournal days when I was doing I was doing valet for private parties for celebrities and stuff. And you openly came on and you told me, you're like, I just want you to know that I log into LiveJournal every Monday just to find out what happened to you this weekend.
True story. Absolutely true. Yes. Yes, indeed. Okay.
Okay, so let's talk
So
about
who
you
was
and your
I?
instead
Right.
of my
Okay.
crazy resume.
So I went to the University of New Hampshire where I got a degree in English, not because I love literature, and I didn't love children. So I definitely did not get a teaching degree. And I was not like a babysitter or in any way like, oh, let me watch your kids. Like that just wasn't my thing. I thought, I hope I like my own kids someday if I get to have any, but I just wasn't naturally like the maternal sort of, oh, I want to touch the future through education. So I got a straight English degree. I did try journalism for the first week, but it was way too stressful. Oh my goodness. And I sat in my advisor's office and I cried. And he's like, you need to just be a librarian. And I was like, I can do that. He's like, oh, please do that. So after university, I had a bunch of different jobs. I worked for some nonprofits. I at one point had 3 jobs because, of course, there's always a tragic backstory. My father died when I was in college. My mother died of cancer 4 years later. And so when she was ill, I had like 3 jobs because, you know, you're 22 and you have no gas money. So I worked at an eating disorders clinic doing medical billing. I worked at the post office, rural post office, wicked funny. You know, you open a mailbox full of bees. That happened to me. So, you know, not afraid to do any kind of job, which I don't think anyone should be afraid. You do the job that needs doing. But I mentioned that all to say that when I did start thinking about homeschooling, it was because I had actually met some homeschoolers, and here are the first children that I actually wanted to be around. They were interesting. They were funny. They were inviting me to read the books that they were enjoying. They were polite. They were super creative. They always had some sort of project going on, and they were normal kids. You know, they could be a pain, but what kid isn't, right? But it was the first time that I had encountered any kind of homeschool kids, and I thought, wow, I had no idea that this existed, but I'm interested because I liked the community of homeschoolers and I liked the way that the family was going. I had a great family growing up, but they weren't around now. So I didn't know if I could homeschool without, you know, grandparents cheering you on or, you know, just the parents, because my mom was a teacher. So I thought, oh man, she would have been great at this. She would have known curriculum or something. And of course, meanwhile, I'm in the single wasteland years where there's nothing. There's just tumbleweed rolling past. The men are thin on the ground, and the ones that are available are just not worthy. And so I remember sitting in the movie theater, because you can't homeschool your kids if you don't have kids, right?
Right.
And I never really craved the marriage family, but of course, you know, you want someone to love you. You want someone that you can love and do life with. And I was in the movie theater for The Lord of the Rings and Aragorn. Yeah, it was like early 2000s.
With Chris Golden?
I don't remember. It was early 2000s.
I think it was where we went with Chris Golden, and then like Golden and I accidentally had a contest to see which one of us could hold off having to pee longest.
Yes. So, but the minute that Aragorn came on the screen and was being such a badass, can I say that word?
Aragorny, yes.
In our family, we pronounce it badass so that we're not actually saying the word because my kids get tweaked out.
Right.
If you say swear. So he came on the screen and I said to God, I will accept as my husband Aragorn from Lord of the Rings or Jonathan Ebba, who's my current husband, but at the time he was in Texas and he was going through a lot and was not even in the same state. He wasn't available. So I don't even know why that came out of my mouth, except I'd had a crush on him since he was 15 and he was now available. And I was like, these are my 2 choices. Go with God, you know, like work that out. Jesus, because
there's nothing wrong with standards, Meg. There's nothing wrong with standards.
So luckily for me, since one of my options was fictional, I did get to marry the man I'd carried a torch for. And when we were dating, we were at dinner one time and he's like, I have to talk to you about something. It's a little controversial. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, have you heard about homeschooling? And I was like, oh yeah, actually, I know a lot of homeschoolers. Their kids are really great. And he's like, yeah, because we grew up with the same experience, not knowing any homeschoolers.
Right.
And he was like, I'd really like to do that if we ever had a family. And I was like, okay, sure, we'll give it a try. And we didn't have a plan to do it. We just knew that we were open to it.
Right.
If we ever had kids. And then we went through a period of infertility where it was like, we don't even know if we were going to have children. So when we did first have our first baby, it was like such a miracle, so great. And then, as they say in Monty Python, it got better. And then I had 2 kids right in a row. So I have 3 children. They are a year and a half apart. Well, there was again, years of infertility, and then kid. So it goes girl, boy, girl. They are currently 13, 14 and a half, and 16, which was very difficult in the beginning. But now actually when they hit school age, it's fantastic because they just move in a pack and we do all the fun things, and it worked out really well. So that's how I became a homeschool mom, I guess. Yeah. Yes, it was. Yeah, because when our oldest was about kindergarten age. So in New Hampshire, where we live, you do not have to send your kid to kindergarten if you don't want to.
Yes.
So
I'm trying to explain Hampshire kindergarten to people. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in a lot of, well, I know, is it like Sweden where they don't even go to school till they're like 7 or 8? They're at home playing and being in the woods. And I think it's fantastic. So here we were like, well, she's only 5. We like her. Let's keep her around. And you only have to declare that your student is going to go to school if they are 6 years old by September 1st, then they can go to 1st grade.
Yep.
And she has a May birthday, so it would have been fine. We didn't have like a cutoff date or anything like that. Some parents are like, oh, my kid's birthday's not till the end of September, and they'll sneak them in. But if it's December, you got to wait a year. Anyways, so she was already reading, and she was super cute, and she was the firstborn girl and just really liked all of the workbooks, and oh, give me another workbook. I'm like, okay, so clearly she's enjoying. We're not even in school, and she's doing this stuff, and we really like her, want to keep her around. And that was really the motivation. I thought, I like my children. It was difficult for me. I have inattentive ADHD, and it was difficult to have little kids. However, I really didn't want to send them away because the experiences that they were having learning new things were so breathtakingly beautiful and miraculous to me. And I'm not really that mushy, but it was like the first time your kid learns to read, the first time they're crying because they don't understand addition, and then they get it. And everything is new to them. They don't know anything. They don't know anything about history. They don't know anything about geography. They know nothing. And then you're the one that gets to show them. And it is so fun. It is so fun to have those moments. You get to have those moments. And you still get to have them if your kid comes home from school. Like, guess what I learned today? But usually, by that point, they don't want to talk about school. And, you find out about it if you find their papers in their backpack or whatever. I just didn't want someone else's schedule. That's the other thing. I'm really bad at schedules and other people's rhythms. I want to set my own rhythm so that I can abandon it if it's a nice day and we need to go to the beach. And I did not want to be on someone else's school schedule. It was like too stressful for me. I'm like, oh no, I need to be a little bit of a free spirit and a rebel. And so I just couldn't imagine getting my kid to a place every day at the same time, and then someone else telling me on this day she has to dress up like with a funny hat, and by the way, there's only a half day on Friday, and here's all these concerts. And I was just like, no, I have to meet other parents. No, I don't want to do that. No.
Don't make someone's main source of socialization was the internet. Don't make us try to talk to people in person in mass.
I know. Oh my gosh. And which is funny because when we had I had mom friends, because I had little kids, and you have to have a few moms who will, bring you a lasagna when you need it, and that you can bring them a lasagna if they need it. So I had a few moms just kind of locally, but you kind of break up, not in a bad way necessarily, unless someone's being a jerk, but you break up when your kids go to school because they are going to different schools. There's private school here, there's public school, there's homeschool. And the minute I said, oh yeah, we're homeschooling, I lost all my mom's friends whose kids were going to public or private school, because it's not like they didn't like me. I mean, who wouldn't like me? Well, people don't, but that's sad. It's a sadness. But just because the rhythms are different, right? So now they have to get their kid to school every day. They have moms that they have to see in the pickup line or volunteering with other moms, and you just kind of drift, and your life becomes about your kids' school schedule. But with homeschooling, your life gets to be about your family, and you get to decide what your priorities are. And I have not met two homeschool families that do it the same. I have one friend who's all about hiking. This mom took her, I think he was 10, her 10-year-old son on the Appalachian Trail with her, which is a trail from in the U.S., Georgia to Maine. And she's like, yeah, we're hiking the AT this year for school. Oh, okay. So
don't go in the caves, man. Supposedly there's cave people. So as long as they didn't go in the caves, they were safe.
I don't think they made it. They made it.
Okay.
But you can really do anything you want to as a family. And we, as nonconformists, really enjoyed that possibility and opportunity. And we made new friends. So it's no big deal.
So that was kind of my question for you, would be part of, how do you set up the coursework? You've literally taken them from kindergarten to junior in high school. Like, is there, we'll get to like regulations later, but are you probably, I'm assuming, talking to other homeschool moms, but like, are there online resources? How do you guys kind of decide what to teach when and how to teach it?
Okay. This is a great question, because when homeschooling started, there were no resources. And now, of course, you can imagine it's a multi-million-dollar industry.
Oh, when I was at Sony, I was trying to convince them that they needed to create entire Pinterest boards, that if they created Pinterest boards with free homeschool resources and their characters, I'm like, you will get so much brand recognition, and nobody would believe me. I was like, you need to just start creating Pinterest boards that have like addition cards and stuff like that, and spelling and handwriting. And I was like, and if you integrate your characters into this is, and I was trying to talk to them like, this is part of, excuse me, but we do use this term, cradle to grave marketing for your brand, just like Disney does. Like, that's why Disney gives away so much free stuff. But yeah, so this is something where like, I was aware that you guys needed resources, and it's hard to try to convince corporate that you guys are a thing. And I'm like, dude, they are so a thing.
It is. So I won't talk about the past, but in the past, because it was questionably legal, there weren't a lot of resources. Now it is legal in all 50 states, I believe. And there are a ton of resources. And the resources really match the style. I didn't know this when I started, but apparently there are different styles of homeschooling. Mm-hmm. For example, there is something called just the traditional classroom style, where you recreate a traditional classroom experience in your home. So sometimes kids have desks. There's, you can ring a bell to, quote, switch classes, and you can make it just like the public school experience. And that's actually very helpful for military families. Do that a lot. And they use like one or two curriculums that are accredited in every 50 state, in all the states, so that if they have to get up and move, they don't lose their homeschooling programming, because their curriculum is accredited. So no matter where they move, they can have this school experience in their house. And so it's, there are families for whom the traditional experience works well or is necessary. There is all kinds of styles. There's something called Charlotte Mason style, based on the Charlotte Mason, who was an educational, philosopher in England in the 1800s. And she deeply believed that children should be outside with sticks and doing nature and observing their world and reading good books. And so she would be kind of not the sit down with a textbook and learn how to take notes style. There's the eclectic style, which is a little bit of everything. That's me. I can't pick one style. I'm going to use whatever works or the best shiny thing.
Girl went for eclectic.
Yes, I did. And there's the classical style of homeschooling, which looks at something called the trivium, which is 3 educational ways that your brain actually works, which is true. I don't disagree with this. It's true that you have the elementary school kid who's all about discovery and memorizing things, the facts like multiplication facts and the 50 states or whatever they memorize. And then they like the what and the where, but their brains don't understand when. And then you get to junior high and all of a sudden they're making more connections. That's called the logic stage. And they have a better understanding of timelines, who does what when, how things are connected. And then the rhetoric stage, which is high schoolers, or that we would know it. You're gonna have to translate this for your European things, but basically like 15 to 18,
right,
where they are now asking their own questions and creating the own questions. Hang on, I'm getting a note from my high schooler just now.
What up, girl?
Becky was wondering if I could go over to swim this morning instead of tomorrow night. She'll be in Barrington at 10 to drop Hannah off at work. We'll definitely be back before 2. Yes or no? Yeah, absolutely.
Yay!
Yeah. Yay. Okay. So she handed me this Post-it note. It was super cute.
Well, congrats to Liberty, because she just did her first podcast.
Yeah. That's super funny. So that's classical homeschooling, where you want to tailor it to where they are as a human being. Like, what is their brain capable of? Don't give your kid, to read Aristotle when they're 6. I mean, unless they're a genius, but we're talking about the regular normal kid.
The normal kid.
And there's all kinds of other styles. So really you have to look at not what curriculum is best, but what you as the parent are going to be able to do. I could never stick with one style of curriculum. I could never do it because of who I am. And it feels like, you should look at what your kids are capable of. But the kids are capable of anything. They really are. And so as a family, you need to decide what are our goals? Are our goals, for exploration right now? Are they for just fun? Do we have a child with special needs? Do we have someone with a learning disability? And then you get to tailor your curriculum to your child, but you would never pick a curriculum that you as a parent didn't like. Mm-hmm. Because just as you think of your best teachers in school, they liked their material. They liked their subject matter. They were excited to teach it to you. And a kid knows if you're like, oh, here we go with math again, then they're not going to like math. So it is okay to lie as a homeschool parent as well, and just really, really hype up some subjects that maybe you did not have a good experience with, but they don't know that. So consequently, we have a very math-loving family, and my husband is in science anyway, and so we are a science family as well, loving science and that sort of thing. But yeah, so curriculum you choose based on what you want to do. That's the parent, because you're the one in charge, and then you can figure out, okay, well, my kid would hate this, or my kid would love this, or I don't care what my kid thinks, they have to do this X, Y, and Z. So there are catalogs, and they come to the house, and you sit down with a pen and you circle things, and you fold down the corners of the pages.
Basically, you have a serious catalog for education.
Super fun. I actually used to run with some friends. We had a nonprofit organization that was so small, it actually wasn't even a nonprofit. We were too small to be a nonprofit. All we were was a bunch of homeschool moms the group had been created back in the 80s to actually really protect each other, because of, it was kind of illegal back then. Not illegal, but, And so the group kind of grew from this, let's, protect our legal rights, to, a bunch of moms being like, hey, we're all going to the beach on Thursday. And so what we did was we had a used curriculum fair at the end of the school year. And the last time we had it, there were 6,000 items that people were trying to sell. And we sold about half of them. And then about half of what was left was donated to charity. And then if, people could pick up their stuff if they wanted to try and sell it again the next year. But that was great because you could go, especially new homeschool moms could go and touch all the things. Like, oh, I saw this in a catalog, but then when you go and touch it in person, you're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was, or this is too hard for my kid, or I don't like the way this looks. And, or that you could find some serious bargains. We unfortunately did have to stop doing that for COVID because the sale was literally everybody touches everything. And in May of 2020, people were still wiping down their groceries. So we decided, hey, let's maybe not have the sale this year.
Let's hold off on it.
Yeah.
But okay, so that also brings me to what now. Let us stop and acknowledge that COVID itself as a whole was a horrible experience for basically the entire world. But there were some aspects of COVID that within dark humor were kind of funny. And I say this as somebody who was in LA during most of COVID, and trust me, things got dark.
Oh my word.
Oh
my word.
But for you, one of the things I will always remember about COVID is you coming onto Instagram and talking about how because of COVID, you went from being the weird mom in the neighborhood to being everybody's new best friend.
It was hysterical. Oh my word. It was so great. So the thing is, I did have a little bit of survivor's guilt because when they shut down the schools, and so now everyone is homeschooling. And they don't want to. How can they? They're working it was crazy. Yeah. My husband started working from home, and it was not okay for like a week until we figured out, where he could set up a computer that he wasn't in our way and we weren't in his way. And after that, it was great. We loved COVID. He was home all the time. We like him. He's a great husband and father. We were having a blast. And then people were like, COVID is awful. We'd be like, oh yeah, COVID is awful. Right. But we were already home. So, it really was not that big of a transition organizationally. What happened was that summer when we were starting to understand a little bit more of what the disease was and was not. And the Department of Education in our state had not made a decision about whether or not they were going to open the schools that fall. They did not make that decision until the middle of August.
Oh my God.
So these poor moms were like, am I quitting my job or not? Am I going to have to like grab grandma from a different state and bring her up here to supervise these kids? And it was very difficult for people. Those were the questions they were asking. Do I have to quit my job and to stay home with my kids or not? I mean, that's just I can't even imagine. So
insane.
But these were, it was hard questions. It was hard times. And it's not just the moms. I know plenty of homeschool dads who are actually, I don't know plenty. I know two where the dad is the primary homeschool teacher, but it is mostly moms. And so what I did and some other friends did is we had backyard meetings with our chairs 6 feet apart, and I would explain to neighborhood moms, okay, if you can't send your kid to school, here's how you can homeschool for 1 year in such a way that you could put your kid back in after. And if you like it, you can keep doing it. But that's what people needed. They're like, what can I do if I have to homeschool for 1 year? What do I do? Like, what curriculum do I do? And so I had, I think, 3 big gatherings, not super spreader gatherings, just, backyard, plenty of fresh air, where we talked about homeschooling. I showed curriculum. I talked about the law, what they could do. And a lot of people decided to homeschool for 1 year because what was happening was they would say, okay, your kids are here. Oh, now you have to be out for 6 weeks. Here's the stuff you have to do online. Okay, now you can come back in. Oh, no, we have another outbreak. And they just didn't want that for their kids. They wanted something more consistent for them and for the children. And so a lot of people were like, hey, you know what? This first year is going to be volatile. Let's just keep them home. They're going to be home anyway if you're doing school at home. So why don't I get to pick what we're doing? Because you have moms from all, with kids all over the place. There were kids with individual education plans with special needs. They were all of a sudden having no support, zero. They're like, oh, well, all your resources are at the school, but you're not at school. Sorry, good luck with that. Are you kidding me? Anyways, and then there were kids who, would get their assignments from the school and do them all in 2 hours. And their mom would be like, yeah, that work was supposed to take you all week. What do you do now? And the teacher was like, oh, I don't know. Good luck keeping them busy. So kids were on screens all the time. And that was crazy. So when you get to choose to homeschool for a year, you don't have to have any computer work if you don't want that. Your kid can be pencil and paper. And what a lot of moms found was that the homeschool option worked better for their child. And then I was getting calls, how do I keep doing this? I decided I don't want to send my kid back. And honestly, a lot of these moms, I hate to say it, their kid was happier than they ever were before because they weren't getting bullied, or they weren't getting stressed, or they were finally working at their own pace, whether that was a slow pace or a fast pace. Who cares? That your kid needs to do what your kid needs to do. But they were finally enjoying learning, enjoying school. And so now they were panicked. Oh no, my kid likes homeschooling. What do I do? I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's a different conversation. But yeah, so what happened was that so many people started homeschooling during COVID. One, they were forced into it. Then they decided to do it for a year. And then they decided to keep doing it because it was working for their family. Plenty of kids, went right back into public school, thriving, absolutely fine. And not everybody can, have a parent stay home. However, in New Hampshire, around that time, they set up something, some different helps. And there's actually a thing, you have to pay for it, but it's basically like hiring a homeschool mom to watch your kids do the work that you assign for them. It's called Kai Pods. And you send your kid to this beautiful classroom with a bunch of other kids, and there's teachers in there, and they supervise the work that you have sent your kid with. So if you have to have two parents working outside the home, but you still want to be in charge of what they're learning and who they're learning it with, you just send them to this. It's like sending, you're like, oh, going to grandma, she's going to supervise. It's like hiring a mom. So that, so that got invented. So a lot of people are doing that. And in fact, in our area, the Kai Pod near us is full with a waiting list of 15 kids.
Wow.
And so, and because of that thing, like the economy is really rough. A single income household is hard. And if you're working, but you're like, if my kid goes back to school, they will have mental health problems. I cannot send them back. Then what do you do? And so that was the answer to that for a lot of people.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it was really fun to have backyard meetings and be like, hi, yes, you don't know me because I don't see you, but it was like friend of a friend told me or heard that you were having this meeting. They were like total strangers in my backyard. I'm like, listen, I got the goods.
Hey man,
Hey man, you want to homeschool? It's practically free.
Okay,
it's not free. But.
But it sounds like, so this is starting to get somewhat regulated, but what do your kids come out with? Like, obviously, are they going to get GEDs? Do they get high school diplomas? What do they walk?
Oh, sure. Okay. So your child, if you homeschool from cradle to grave, you issue, well, in our state anyway, you issue a homeschool diploma to your child at age 18. If they finished their credits before 18, you can still issue a diploma. You just have to register that with the Department of Education and let them know, hey, here are all their credits. But you just issue a homeschool diploma, same as they would get in high school. You have a transcript for them. which is something I'm working on creating now. And as I go, you can, they would get a high school diploma, and I don't think that anybody would question it because homeschooling is legal. So in ours, but it's different in every state, right? So there's an organization called the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and they have a map, and you click on your state and it tells you all the regulations for your state. That's all. So it's super easy to find out what the regulations for your state is. You just click on the picture of your state on that map. Super easy. In New Hampshire, there are 20 required credits for graduation for any student, public, private, whatever. And basically, it's the same anywhere. 4 credits of language arts, 3 credits of social studies, which includes history, but also like civics and economics, 2 credits of math, I think 2 credits of science. It's a very low, it's like 20 credits. If your child wants to go to college, however, you need more credits than that. Right. So our children, I don't know, well, one of them definitely is going to college because she wants to be a doctor. We tried, we're like, come on, be entrepreneurs, like do the trades and make money while you're young. And she's like, no, I want to go to med school. We're like, dang it. Okay.
Well, that's what
she's loved it since she was 11. My husband, who actually almost did go to med school, his life took a sharp turn, but he has this thing called the Merck manual on his shelf, and all of his like studying for the MCAT.
Yep.
Which he did really well. And so she would like be sneaking the Merck manual into her room to learn about diseases because she loved them so much. So
I love your kid's form of rebellion is sneak reading medical textbooks.
I know. The only music we do not listen to in our house is opera because I don't like it. So what did the girls embrace this spring? That's right. They went through an opera phase. Hysterical. So funny. Bunch of nerds. Love them. So yeah, we are more of an academic leaning household. So all my children will graduate with all of the credits they need to go to college, whether they go to college or not. Right. Because what I heard from a lot of homeschool moms whose kids, definitely were like, oh, I don't want to go to college. What's happening for a lot of these kids is, they would get the minimum amount of credits to graduate, get their homeschool diploma, go out into the workforce, and then make a bunch of money or not, and then decide, hey, you know what, I want to go to college. But they never got the high school credits they needed. They never had lab science. They stopped math at Algebra 2.
Right.
And now they had to have they had to pay a bunch of money for kind of remedial college classes that they could have gotten in high school. And so we just thought, we heard that and we're like, oh, you know what, let's prep them. Let's give them the tools in case they want to go, so that if they do go, they'll be fine. And then if they want to go later, they're like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember this from trig. You know what I mean? So yeah. That's kind of our philosophy, is to prep your kids for college, whether they go or not, if they're capable of it. Again, not every kid should go to college. Not every kid has to go to college. There's way better ways to make a living than going to college. But we did tell them, okay, I was an English major, but I was an English major in the late 1990s. I don't have college debt. No college debt. I would never encourage my child to be an English major in the year of our Lord 2023. I would never do it. Because what are you going to do when you grow up with an English major other than be a teacher, a librarian, or a journalist, which I just don't recommend the journalist thing. And
because
not raising my kids to be liars. And then, librarian's great, but in rural New Hampshire, you do not need a degree to be a librarian. You do in a big city or a corporation. And then, teacher, you don't have to, you can go to community college for that. So anyways, if you're going to go to college, we're like, hey, go to college because you can't learn your skill any other way. Right. So like biomedical sciences, engineering, these are things that you can't, they're 4-year degrees, and that you want to be something at the end of it. And that job would allow you to pay your loans back, because we're not paying for college because we're a one-income family. So, and there's this weird thing too in America where if you're poor enough, you get financial aid.
Yeah.
And so our kids will probably get some aid for that anyway. But we don't know. And we don't really care. We're just trusting God, and they're going to make their own decisions. And again, like I said, we're trying to encourage them to think outside the box, have more than one income stream. And, our firstborn is like gung ho. I'm going to college for the next 12 years. Our youngest, also a girl, wants to be a nurse midwife because she loves babies and wants to be a wife and mother is her goal, but she wants to have a side hustle that she can do that will bring in, quote, real money, unquote. So she's going to be a nurse, and pretty excited about that. When you're 16, you can become an LNA, which is licensed nursing assistant. So she wants to do that. And then, so my husband and I grew up and money was a mystery. We didn't know what our parents did really, how money worked, how money came in, came out. They didn't talk about it.
They didn't talk about it. All we knew was that there just wasn't enough of it. Yep.
Exactly.
Financial literacy. Yep.
Yeah. And we did not want that for our children. So my husband and I actually did a program that got us free from consumer debt, and they were little, so didn't notice that we didn't have anything. And, we don't have a lot, but that's not our goal. Our bills are paid. There's food on the table. We're having a great life. And our kids know about money. So they have little jobs because they want them. They're not contributing to the household. It's their money. And they give 10% to charity. They save 15%. And when you get enough money, you can open a mutual fund. Mm-hmm. And then the rest is theirs to decide what they want to do with. My oldest does have, with the rest, we call it the mad money, but she's got it separated into categories. This is what I'm saving for college. This is my fund for books. This is my fund for going out with friends. This is X, Y, and Z. So our kids have the financial literacy that we didn't have growing up, which is something you can do even if you don't homeschool. I encourage you to tell your kids where money comes from and to organize their own funds. But as far as college goes, I don't know if they'll go, except for the first one, maybe the third one. The second one, oh, he's amazing. He's wicked smart. But he's a boy, and he loves everything. He loves all the things. So he doesn't know what he wants to do because he wants to do all the things. So he wants to be a rocket scientist and a plumber. So
I'll make more as a plumber, honestly. I know rocket science. He'll make more as a plumber.
That's the thing. I was like, buddy, but he doesn't want to get bored, and there is something to be said for, the college experience and all that it entails in terms of networking and making friends. My kids aren't partiers. That's not their goal, but so he kind of sees that, but doesn't know what he wants. And that's totally fine. Who knows what they really want when they're 14 and a half. And I say that to him all the time. It's like, well, my sister knows. Both my sisters know. And I'm like, well, I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know. I majored in English because it was the thing I was the least worst at, not because I had a passion for it.
Hey, you're talking to somebody whose undergrad is from an art school, is a BFA from a school that doesn't exist anymore.
Right? Yeah.
Remember, Notre Dame closed down like 2 years after I graduated.
Yeah, I know. And the thing, that's what you have. It's so hard. It's one of those things you don't learn until you're older, and you realize it was true the whole time, but you can't really understand that life is not about what you do. It's about who you are.
Yep.
And so kids think career, or what am I doing? What am I contributing? And I'm like, I don't care what you do or how much money that you make. Are you kind? Are you generous? Are you faithful? Do you have integrity? Are you trustworthy? These are the things that I am trying to teach you at school. I don't care what kind of grades you get. I mean, I kind of do, but if you're doing your best and your personal best is a C+, then hallelujah, you got that C+ and you worked for it. If your best is an A and you slack off, we have a different conversation. But are you working hard? Like the character that I get to instill because they're home with me is more important to me than where they go to college or what they do for a living, because all that can change in an instant, as we all learned from COVID. And what are you left with? You're left with the people that you love and the people that love you and who you are as a person. And if you're a hardworking, kind person, then you'll take the third job or you'll take the night job to provide for your family, and you won't be ashamed of it. So we homeschool because we want to raise good kids who become good adults and contribute joy to the world, not because we have a particular educational outcome, although it's looking like they will have good educational outcomes. And people are like, oh my goodness, like how are your kids so, so smart, so academically talented? I'm like, first of all, they have a bunch of like smart, lazy Gen X parents, and that there's genetics involved. We don't allow video games. We have very little TV in our house. Nobody has a personal computer. Our kids don't have phones. So the books are there. It's a form of entertainment. Use them or lose them. We've made choices in our lives that are a little avant-garde deliberately because we see that is creating the kind of kid that we want to be around. And now that we have teenagers, oh my goodness, I love teenagers. I know they have some hormonal ups and downs, but honestly, they're so great. They're just becoming who they were meant to be. They're funny. They are, surprisingly thoughtful. They can do a lot of things. I haven't mowed the lawn in 2 years because they learned how to do it. And I can say, go mow the lawn. And they say, okay. And then they go mow the lawn. So the teenagers are great. And
so
I really like,
you're
and
also
you wanted to,
your own street gang, basically.
yeah. And you wanted to talk about high school, like homeschooling high school, because there are some things that you can't provide at home. One of those things we found you cannot provide at home is lab science. We actually did do biology at home because my husband is a biologist. So we have all the microscopes and the glassware and I ordered the dissection materials, and we were all there with our knives. Oh yeah, kitchen table, fetal pig,
Please tell me you made Jonathan do that lesson. You're like, this one's all you.
Well, no, because he wasn't home. I did tell him, hey, we're dissecting this week, and you should be prepared to geek out about that. But most of the time it was just he was really helpful. He was less helpful in the labs and more helpful on like teaching like scientific I don't even know what it is because I didn't do it. I outsourced it to him. Like graphs, like learning how to put data into Excel.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So he taught them like all the computer things and statistics. There it is. Yes, statistics and all that. But so I mentioned my one kid wants to be a doctor, and I thought, oh dang, I was trying to get you to be like an entrepreneur, but okay, whatever. If you really want this, I cannot install a Bunsen burner in my kitchen.
There's safety concerns. Like when you start getting like I'm like, dude, I've been to your house, and I mean, you got a big porch, and that's great, but that porch is also wooden. So I would not recommend.
Yeah, and so plus the other things like
I would not recommend doing science on the flammable wooden porch in New Hampshire.
Exactly. Nor can I purchase the chemicals.
No.
Legally.
No. Like, so, if you start walking around asking for like raw potassium, somebody's going to ask them questions about explosives.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to get on a watch list. And so, like, for example, we decided to let each kid pick which foreign language they want to do. My oldest took Spanish. Then it came time for my son, who's in the middle. And he's like, I want to learn Russian. And I was like, really? Okay. So I bought, some curriculum, and, that it's really hard to learn a Cyrillic language. So we got Duolingo. And I was like, man, I'm going to get on a watch list with like you learning Russian, because the timing was, we weren't talking about politics, but the timing was really, and so I was like, I'm going to get on a watch list. You're going to get watched. And he's like, maybe I'll get recruited. I was like, oh my gosh, no, the last thing I need you to be is in government. Please do not do that. Okay. So anyways, we decided to go.
Like, okay, so, okay, well, tell me the rest of Pam, and then we'll talk about like
Okay.
the stuff. Okay.
So with homeschooling, if there is something that you do not feel comfortable teaching yourself, you can send your kid to a regular brick and mortar school for one class. And that's what we did last year for chemistry for my oldest. I had to drive her every day to a school, and she loved it. She had a great time. She had no problem fitting in. She was in honors chemistry, and she did all the experiments, and she learned all the things, and she had to it was good organizationally too. She had to, submit things on time, study for tests. She did great. She loved it. It was a great experience. And it was a great experience for us too, to not have to have a Bunsen burner and chemicals and burn our house down, which we might not have done because we're very, we're safety conscious, but it was great. But other parents will send their kids to things, just to a brick and mortar school for sports. Their kid's really great at sports and they just want to go in and play a sport or do drama or learn a foreign language, or like, oh, I could never, ever, ever teach whatever, some of the electives like economics or civics or something, and so you can choose to send your kid in for one class and then bring them home for the rest of things. And a lot of people do that. You can also, moms get together and they have cooperatives. So we'll get together with a bunch of moms. There'll be the science mom, the literature mom, the math mom.
Right.
And, you just collaboratively, who's got what skill, and then let's see how we can help each other out, which is really great. And so we're in a cooperative like that, where I'm teaching American literature this year. Another mom is teaching symbolic logic. One mom's doing economics in the spring, and it's just great. And we just decide every year, okay, here's a bunch of high schoolers. We've got like 20 high schoolers. What do they need? What do they not have yet? Collectively, who's got what electives and who's, who wants to teach what. Right. So it's really good because it's also free. There's like a $20 photocopying fee. That's it. So we don't have to, not too much money, but that's it. And and it's really great. So the things you can create what you need to fill in the gaps for your kid.
So I have a question. I have two questions. One is, because I think for me, it also kind of goes back to proving to people outside your bubble that your kids know what they know.
Yeah, that's true.
And so one was, how do they know you're not lying on your kids' transcripts?
Okay, so one way to
maybe that's the scam the system American in me, but the minute you said that, I'd be like, my kid would be 4.0.
Well, that's a hard thing. Okay, that's actually a really good question, because I do have a kid who does have a 4.0. And so that's the other reason it was good for her to have one class at a public, or actually it was a private school.
Right.
The public schools were full for chemistry. And so she has this one class. So alongside the transcript that I will send, I will have a transcript from that school with one class on it. And they'll say, oh yeah, she really did get this A from someone who wasn't her parent. But also the colleges are also looking at test scores. So I know the test scores are optional for a lot of colleges, but if you say that your kid has a 4.0, that's also going to be reflected with their ACT or SAT scores.
Right.
And then the college interview, and their experiences that they're having and what they're doing on the side. A lot of people would question it, but one way that they do that is colleges will ask for, if they're really questioning it, they'll say, can I see some work? Show me a paper, like submit a paper that you wrote your senior year. But most colleges don't. They're just like, we're going to meet this kid and we're going to know, is this kid motivated to come here and do this work and achieve the goals they want to achieve? And I guess they can tell. I don't know. But yeah, so it's good to have side things. And honestly, most college bound homeschoolers are not, I shouldn't say most, a lot of an increasingly large number of homeschooled high schoolers are going to college with like 6 to 20 college credits already completed because they did them in high school.
I was going to say, like I
Yeah.
tested out just in English. I tested out of like 3 classes before I even started, which is how I did my suicidal undergrad run in 3 years, which
so there's a bunch of ways to get credit.
Sleep deprived for 3 years. But like I got out of, I tested out of like, because we were supposed to have, 4 English things.
Yeah.
And I tested out of 3 of them. And so that was my question, is like, your kids could just start to take the certs and get the test outs, which of course also saves the money.
Yeah, it does. A lot of them are, so you can get college credit in a lot of ways. A lot of schools will take AP credit, and if you get a good score in the AP, you don't have to take that class. You can do something called CLEP, CLEP.
That's what I did. I did CLEP testing.
Yeah, you CLEPed out of it. Same thing, and you get the credit for it. You can actually go as a high schooler and take classes at college, either online or in person. It's called dual enrollment. So my kid's doing that this year. She's taking her like freshman English or whatever.
Yeah,
and
way.
Yeah, and so then and it's cheaper too for college, for high school students. They give you a deal, and so then she'll have those college credits, but I will count them on her transcript as like, oh, this is what you did for English your junior year, and then it's just a way to kind of get gen eds out and to introduce the high school student to the workload of a college student, and go in with credits and save some money and save some time. And so, yeah, if you have a 4.0, that'll be proven. The proof is in the pudding, and people don't usually question it, but there's usually other things on the transcript. Oh, they say they have a 4.0. They took college classes and got A's there too. Okay, I guess it's real.
Yeah. Cause like, that was because like when I went and I took the A1, and I remember hitting up on Instagram being like, dude, there are tests. Like the Europeans made tests so you can prove your kids know the languages they know. Remember we had that conversation?
Yes.
And I'm assuming I passed. Oh, the fun story. Okay, so why does everyone in New Hampshire have some modicum of French? Because of the Canadians, right?
Right, absolutely.
So we all, like, the Canadians come down, and for people that are not from New Hampshire is a state in the US that does not have sales tax. And because we do not have sales tax, people from Massachusetts go north to us, and people from Canada come south to us, and they come across the border, and the majority of what they buy is alcohol, electronics, and fireworks. Because New Hampshire's state motto, live for your tattoos, is a real thing. And what?
And tattoos and cigarettes.
Yes. So if you have never been to New Hampshire's actual honest to God state motto is live free or die. They take that very seriously. And I've tried to explain to people that's a legit coin flip for your outcome sometimes. Although
you're in Scotland, and I feel that Scots would appreciate the live free or die model.
I really feel that
they do.
Like they really do. But when I explain to them that I grew up in a state that has no seatbelt law, they think we're crazy. Okay. Like, I really wasn't kidding. We got delayed doing this podcast like 3 times because it just happened to be annual inspection time for my apartment. And they had to come through and like somebody, I am a renter, and someone came in and checked all of my appliances. It isn't like they regulate here, man. Like they can't even catcall me in the streets. It's illegal. So they have fun, but they also have guardrails. But so I'm doing my A1, which I like, even before I took the test, the guy at the French embassy, the French consulate was like, he's like, you should have just done A2. You're going to pass this. Don't worry about it.
Oh,
good. So they have a portion where you're talking to this person to prove that you can listen and speak French. And so I'm explaining to her in French, like the geography of the US, which she said, she's like, you're fine. You're going to pass. I have to go in October to do my A2. But so I'm explaining to her about New Hampshire and how everybody comes, because she thought it was hilarious. And the only word I did not know in French was fireworks, which is feu d'artifice. So I'm sitting there rattling off to her, because we've all had to explain it, about how New Hampshire, we learn French because the Canadians come to buy explosives and electronics from us. And I kept having to explain it to people in the French consulate. Like, I think I explained it 3 times because they were so weirded out. so weirded out by an American and who spoke like I am not fully fluent. Like if I watch a TV show, I'm still like rewinding and listening a couple times, but enough that they were just like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it's very common, very common." So I thought you would be amazed to know that my 6 years with Mrs. Peters gave me the skills to mystify some French people in the Edinburgh French consulate. And that is just pure New Hampshire.
It is pure New Hampshire. We're really lucky. We actually are right now, I think we have one of the freest, if not the freest, the most free educational choice policies in the country, which is just policy. It's not politics. In New Hampshire, they are required to, or the state has decided that they will give the same amount of money per student to each kid, no matter where they live. It's called the Adequate Education Grant. So say it's like $4,000, I think.
Right.
If you've got a K through 12 kid, the state gives $4,000 to that kid. If you go to public school, they send that $4,000 to the public school and they use it. Now, obviously, towns are like, no, it costs more than $4,000 to educate a child. It's more like $13,000 to $21,000. But as someone who used to educate a child on $0, I'm just like, what? That's a lot of money. But it's not that. It's for the building. It's for the infrastructure. It's to pay teachers and special ed teachers, and everybody has health insurance. And I mean, it costs a lot of money to do business. And so, if your kid does not go to public school, though, if they go to private school or they homeschool, the state doesn't send that $4,000 to the public school. They send it to an educational trust fund where it just sits. And right now there's $100 million in the educational trust fund because they haven't known what to do with it. Because if you go to private school, you pay for it yourself. And if you homeschool, you pay for that yourself. So they created a thing called the Educational Freedom Account. And all it does is if you decide that you are, well, actually, it is an income-based thing. So it's like 350% of the poverty level based on your family size. And so if you qualify for the Educational Freedom Account, the state will now take that $4,000 and instead of sticking it in some educational fund, they give it to you for educational expenses. And it's wild to, and the best thing is it does not take money away from the public school, because that money was never going there anyway. It was getting, shoved in a trust fund. So nobody's losing out. Public schoolers are like, it's stealing money from, like, it's actually not. I don't know what, it might be doing that in other states, but in New Hampshire, it wasn't ever going there anyway.
Right.
And so you can then use that money to help defray the cost of private school. You can use it for homeschooling. And we still do have homeschoolers in the state, obviously, who are just traditionally homeschooling without taking the Educational Freedom Account. It is slightly different in terms of reporting and what you have to send to the DOE at the end of the year. But it's been a game changer for us. So using that money that's how we could send our kid to do a lab science at a private school. Right. Our kid who wanted to be a doctor now got that experience. Like, it was a miracle for us. And same thing instead of, getting the old textbook off eBay, I can buy a brand new textbook and you open it and it's
Please
like,
tell me that you're making them cover them with Market Basket paper bags.
Oh, we totally have to cover them with Market Basket paper bags. So what else? How do you not cover your book in a pipe? Anyways, Market Basket. So that's our grocery store. So anyways, that the Educational Freedom Account enables low to middle income families to have some experiences that would not be available to them because they were only ever available to people who could afford it out of pocket. Which is funny because no, I won't get into that because that is politics. But the best thing about it is that there's now money to do things that we didn't have before, and it really is all for education. You cannot buy any household items. You can't do. There's so much that you can't do. It's very highly regulated. All of your purchases are approved or disapproved. There's approved vendors that you can use. Curriculum sites are approved. It's not like, oh, I'm just giving you $4,000 and you go on a vacation. Absolutely not. It is only for books. classes, online classes. That's how we're doing our kids' science this year. Everyone is taking their science online, and with really good, reputable online science, curriculum and fantastic things. And so it gives us more opportunity that we wouldn't have necessarily had. And we would have been fine. Our kids would have been fine. But oh my goodness, what a game changer. And again, it's an educational freedom account. It's part of the law. There are always people trying to undo it. A lot of people don't believe in school choice. And so, but we currently have it. So
you might as well use it. Yep.
Until we don't have it anymore. And again, I don't want to talk politics, but so many kids are being helped by using the money to get out of a bad situation that was just not working for them because of bullying or, where they live, the public schools aren't great. And so now they get to go to a private school that is great. And, we're not talking we're talking lower income kids. And so they are just thriving now. And it's going to help our state. It's going to help our whole state when the kids are getting educated in a quality manner. So the educational freedom account enables, as you might imagine, freedom
of education.
Okay, yeah, because live free or die.
Oh my God. I don't know if I ever told you this when I worked for, and this is just like the joy of New Hampshire, because everybody thinks it's all just like Phillips Exeter is what everybody thinks it's just like, and yet at the same time, when I was during COVID, I worked for that tech company out of Arkansas, and I never went to Arkansas. I never met them because COVID. Because they were like, normally we'd have brought you down here for 3 days and probably taken you out drinking. I'm like, thanks guys. But we sat there at one point, myself and my engineering team. I don't remember they were talking about their bridges. Like, it's just like New Hampshire, like how they have like the town with the one blinking light instead of the stoplight, or like the bridge, they have a bridge that has a crack in it. So instead of actually fixing the support of the bridge, somebody literally just bolted a piece of metal over the crack. That was something they showed us. And we literally just sat there and traded northern redneck stories versus southern redneck stories.
Oh yeah.
Came out pretty much even all, which was great. But
well, and I think education in this country, so homeschoolers generally score higher on standardized tests than public schoolers. And it's just because it's your education as a homeschooler is tailored to your homeschooler. Yeah. It's you, and it's not so much even about the academics. Like I said before, for a lot of people, us included, the academics are great and we are doing them at a high level, but our values are different for what we want as an outcome. We want a good person. And so, but the test scores are higher. It does have an outcome of individual, hardworking, smart, kind people. And there are always going to be the horror stories of, the mom who homeschooled and her kids can't read because she just was bad at it or whatever. She wasn't really teaching them. And honestly, those are few and far between.
Way to go, English major.
Yeah, thank you. Right? Because of community, because we all know, like, oh, that mom says she's homeschooling and her kids are just sitting around doing nothing. It's not like we would step in, because again, it's New Hampshire. So, I have neighbors I've not even met in 5 years, but people would know, and you would step in and you'd be like, hey man, can you be part of our co-op? Can we help you? But by and large, that is not the problem. There's very, very low to zero to nothing of those cases, and it's because mostly homeschooling is free. So,
right, because it's interesting.
You don't do it unless you want to.
Right. So what's interesting for me in hearing you talk about that is that I'm having conversations as a professional now with because let's be honest, thanks to the joy that was the George Bush administration, everything in public schools is about standardized testing.
Right. Yeah.
Funding on it, and they get all this. And so what I have ended up having conversations with like C-suite people about is, we have younger millennials and we have Gen Zs, and we have more than Gen Zs and the incoming, the upcoming Gen As, where like we're having problems with helping them to understand that nobody's going to give them answers anymore.
Right.
And like I have had like mentorship calls with younger women in my field, where I've literally had this even in the last month, right? Where I have had to say to her, I'm not trying to be mean, but nobody's ever going to teach you how to do your job. You
Right.
need to accept that your boss is not going to help you, because she's in a situation. I was like, and you need to sit down and decide, all right, I need to teach myself how to do my job. And so there's somebody else where I'm going to podcast with, a girl, Mari, who she teaches, like she graduated from a business program. Now she teaches at a business program, and she's seeing that happen with kids that are coming into college. And we noticed this even when I was a rowing coach back in like 2008. We would know kids that would get all the way through the high school program, because I was never a college coach. That's a whole other level of rowing. But like they would come back and they would talk about these kids, or we'd talk to people, because we talk to college teachers and college coaches all the time, as part of the recruitment process. And they knew that there were going to be a certain amount of kids each year that would just not be able to handle the fact that there wasn't structure anymore. And that's, I think, is one of the real problems with everything being so emphasized on just making it through the standardized testing, is that kids learn only those answers, but they're not necessarily learning the thought process to get to those answers. And it sounds like
that's true.
Yeah, and I think that might be the difference, because I'm seeing it in the workplace.
That's true. Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that, actually, because it's true. And test scores in the US standardized test scores have not risen since the 1980s. So clearly all of the things are not working, right? But in order to get federal money for your school, you have to use, if your school wants money from the government, which they all need to exist, you have to do it their way. You have to do the testing. You have to do this thing. And so obviously poor teachers who get like so little support. Well, I mean, it depends. Some teachers have great school systems, great admins. They feel very supported. Some do not, but they all have to test, and the test scores aren't rising.
Nope.
And they have to teach to the test, and the test scores aren't rising. And the kids are not learning how to think. They're learning how to get the information they need to get the test score they need to move on to do the thing. Homeschooling, I tested my kids last year for the first time just to see how they do. We usually do a portfolio review for our end of year assessment, which is just, I take a sample of everything we've done. I show it to a certified teacher. She determines whether or not we made adequate progress, which we did. And then, I send the results in. But they've never really done a standardized test. And I was like, oh, you should probably learn how to do this. And they were like so stressed. They were like so stressed. We're like, what is this? And it wasn't even Scantron where you fill in the little bubbles. Like all online now.
They have to do the number 2 and the thing. And
so one of them did, and then the other one, I was like, forget it, we're doing it online. But I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this. And they did great. They, of course, excelled. But yeah, so homeschooling, we do not teach to the test. We teach them how to think critically, critical thinkers, and we teach them how to learn and to be self-learners and to like learning and to want to learn many things. Hopefully, so that they're in a job, they're going to be the ones thinking with an R&D mentality, like research and development. They're going to be like, well, let's try this. They're curious. They're creative. They're, really imaginative. And I know that that's because we have not said, okay, here are the 8 things that you need to learn, and it's going to be on the test. Yeah. We're like, here is a subject that is so varied and wonderful, and there's so much to explore, and here are 20 books on it, and you can pick 5, and they read all 20. So it's a different philosophy of education. And I think that again, I don't want to talk politics, but the philosophy education for homeschooling is completely different than the politics for public schooling. It's just totally different. It's a complete ideological shift. And there are some wonderful people, public school advocates. Is it Tony Robbins? I forget. Who wrote a great book on kind of the history of public schools in America and how they really were just created to create factory workers.
Yes.
You know, and so that's not a political thing. That's like a true historical fact.
Yeah. No, I totally.
They standardized it.
I said we are seeing a lot of what we're seeing. I said we are seeing the culmination of Rockefeller's vision for public schools, which is to turn out obedient minds that are waiting for direction.
Exactly. And that's not going to cut it in today's society. If you want to, you know, contribute significantly to a business and you have no original ideas and you can't teach yourself your job, you can't think on the fly, and then you get mad that no one's teaching you, you're just sorry, they're going to hire somebody else. And so I think that individual educational modalities are the way of the future. I think that the one size fits all approach creates a really good factory workers, but factories are shutting down, and we need a different approach. It's just not working anymore. And so for those of us who are homeschooling, we're like, yeah, we know it's not working and we don't want to raise those kind of kids anyway. and if our kid grew up and was like the best factory worker that they could be, hallelujah, good for them. But that's your kid, and you have to know that going in, like, oh, you know what, my kid is gonna work at the Walmart distribution center and they're going to love it. And they're going to come, they're going to kind of have a 9 to 5 or a 11 to 3. And they're going to be, you know, super great, loyal friend and neighbor. Like, I'm not talking that there's a good and a bad job or career, but there is a good and a bad way to think. Can you think on your feet? Are you learning to collaborate with others? Are you a critical thinker? Can you spot a lie or a corruption a mile away and then have the character strength to not participate in something sketchy, you know,
right?
Because you're afraid of what people will think or your peers. And we all go through that insecurity, but homeschooling with the critical thinking skills, I think we're going to see a lot of kids excelling in the workplace. And then someone will say, oh, were you homeschooled? It's kind of like oh man, that weird homeschooler. Now it's going to be like, oh wait, hey, a homeschooler applied for this. I bet they're really a go-getter. Because they will be, you know, because they know that it's in their hands.
I think it's a psychology thing because, you know, you and I both came from places where there wasn't much, you know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, we both watched each other hustle. You know, you guys watch me hustle to the point where you're like, dude, you should probably sleep. But that was most of my 20s, was people going, you should probably get some sleep. But I think because of that, it doesn't occur to me to not do things. You know what I mean? It doesn't occur to me to not go out and learn. And honestly, part of the fun of doing this podcast for me is all the stuff and the different people that I get to learn from. But I am genuinely surprised when I talk to people in my field and they're like, oh yeah, no, I haven't really gotten any new certifications. Or I had some guy try to hold up as a point of pride for me that he's been working with databases for 30 years and he used to work at IBM. And I'm like, dude, like, I hate to break it to you, but like, okay, like you need to go explore the world a little, sweetheart. I mean, I'm not like, that's just his niche and that's what he's doing. But I was like, I don't know that I'd be bragging right now that I worked in IBM in the 80s. Which sounds mean, but if you're in the tech industry and you're listening to this, everybody just nodded their head and went, yeah. But it's like the AI stuff that's coming up. Like, I already found the free resources on Google. I'm like, I might not be programming it, but let me understand the concepts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's whether or not you're willing to have that constant learning that determines whether or not you have a job, basically.
I completely agree. Yeah. Yeah. And again, you don't have to be homeschooling to teach that philosophy to your children.
Right.
You absolutely do not. However, homeschooling does lend itself more toward that way of thinking and to be willing to constantly adapt and change, to learn something for yourself and, you know, to maybe bless others with that skill in your future employer, or maybe you start your own business, or you just know things. And if there's a field you love, like the tech field, you'd be an idiot if you didn't, continue to be a learner.
Google doesn't require college degrees anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's, in terms of raising the kids, like I don't know if you know who the guy that made Bulletproof Coffee, this guy, Dave Asprey, and he's a big biohacker dude. And I'm like, I don't agree with everything he says because some of it's like out there. But one of the things he talked about in terms of how he raises his kids, which I thought was very interesting, was at dinner, he asked them every day, he's like, tell me 3 things you learned today. And then tell me at least 1 thing you failed at today.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And if the kid is like, I didn't fail at anything, it's like, oh, that's too bad. That means you didn't learn anything today.
Yes.
Yes. Right. So it's one of those things where I don't just want to know I want to know what you learned by not doing well. And I was like, oh, it's such a great philosophy towards it. And
absolutely.
And I don't understand the aversion to fallibility that I run into a lot. And maybe it is just because I had to learn that through sheer experience.
Well, some of it is like, there was this podcast we listened to where a guy was explaining how he was so afraid of rejection that he couldn't get over it. And so he decided to get rejected at least 1 time a day for 100 days or something like that. And so he would go do things like, he'd be at like a fast food place and he would say, can I have a refill on my cheeseburger? Which, no, like, you can't. No. Sir, this is a Wendy's. So, he would get rejected and he would like live with that rejection, even stuff he would know he was going to get rejected, and he got over it. And I feel like that's what we are teaching our children with all their experiments and education. Like, oh, hey, especially as they get older, you move from teacher to coach.
Yep.
So I have taught them now how to be organized, but executive functioning skills are what they are for each kid. And I want them to fail because they didn't study. I want them to not always fail, but it's okay to have that first failure because you didn't study, and to, have especially my son, he is like little Mr. Engineer, always building something. And when he was little, and we're the kind of parents who are just like, here's a hammer and some nails, go build the thing. And he built his first tree house and it fell right apart. And like, it was just terrible. And he was so devastating. We're like, oh, that's fine. No big deal. What's your second design? And he looked at us like, what? We're like, well, how would you fix it? And he's like, well, I think I need a cross brace. So we're like, let's get you a cross brace. And so, and then of course, so then he had this victory, right? He had a tree house that didn't fall down. And he was so proud of himself until he went to his friend's house, and whose friend's dad built a tree house with like actual materials and like bolts and things. And then his disappointment wasn't an engineering disappointment. It was how poor are we kind of disappointment. He's like, why can't we just have? I'm like, okay, sorry. Yeah, that's good luck.
Yeah, dude, that's a whole other problem. Yeah.
That's a different kind of conversation. But yeah, we want them to learn and make mistakes and have failure because that's how you learn. And we're not afraid. We don't see failure as a bad thing.
Yeah.
There's a kind of failure that is, I don't know, there's different types of failure. Like when you fail because you didn't study and you know that you should have, is a different feeling than, hey, I was trying to build this and there was something I didn't consider and I will consider it differently the next time. And so we have a different kind of compassion, and a different kind of approach for different kinds of failures. And I think that that's appropriate. But yeah, it's good to fail. It's good to learn. And have you heard of micro learning? This is a new thing.
What is this?
It's actually probably not a new thing. So micro learning is you ask AI, I want to become an expert or whatever level, a middle level expert on, and then pick your thing. Teach me Italian as fast as you can, but only conversationally, because I have a job where I have to be there for 2 months. And so
I did it. I didn't know there was a name for it. I did it because I knew I needed to review for the A1 and the A2, and I saw a prompt that says, and I saw and like the prompts on ChatGPT are killer. So like I decided that well, gracias a Los Angeles, hablo poco de español, totalmente mexicano, right? Not proper, right? Total Mexican Spanish because Los Angeles. And that's, before I get any calls, that's not a knock on Los Angeles. That is simply the culture. It is Mexican, Latin, Spanish. It is not. But what we taught academically is European, right? And I'm like,
it's
if I could pass the assuming I do the A2, which I'll do the A2 for French in October, I was like, I'll bet I could do the A2 for Spanish in December. So I sat down, and by the way, there's no real reason for this other than that as an American, it is a differentiator on your resume if you have actual tests instead of just saying I took French. It's just a differentiator that don't have. So I'm not like trying to take over the world or anything. It just looks really good on a resume. And so I sat down with chat. You can sit down and say to it, like, I have 6 weeks to study for this test. Please create a curriculum for me. So 3 days a week, 1 hour a week, that gives me all of the knowledge I would need to, like, it won't tell you the test. It won't give you test samples. Test samples are online. It will not give you answers. I did try just to see if I could do it. But that's the thing. It'll give you that whole, and that's like, I can't understand the people that are like, AI is taking, I'm like, AI is a tool. Like, you need to understand it is a tool. We are not at Skynet. Like, literally, when China and the US are putting their hands up and saying, we are both agreeing to not make Skynet, we're good, kids. But I can't. When I even say to people at work, because like part of what I do at work is I create workflows, right? And just trying to be like, hey guys, we can use, like, I use Zapier for some stuff. I'm like, we can literally set it up so we can use Zapier to create connections using AI between your workflows, so that instead of you guys trying to run an entire department out of an email inbox, let's create a form, and that form then feeds in, and that form creates a Trello card, and that goes on your board. And but the minute that you say AI to some people, they're like, mm-mm. And like, I had to do a whole thing of letting go of your fear of AI, but it's a tool. Like, it skips a lot of stuff for you. That's the way I look at it, is it skips the crap so that one of my favorite, and it was actually ironically AI that we started doing this, when I worked at Fox, like, it's a whole thing, but basically like AWS and Google were just giving us free engineering because they wanted to prove out, because it was a whole new company, new computer infrastructure, greenfield, like everybody wanted to be our cloud provider. And so they would just give us free engineering, be like, let us show you everything we can do with ML, right? This was 2018, 2019. And so they literally, at one point, Google was just like, I'll just give you like 300 grand of engineering. See what you can figure out to do with it. Just 300 grand of your engineering resources on cloud, do whatever. And my boss was like, I don't have time for this. So he just like gave it to me, and he's like, go ahead and go talk to production and see if we can fix something for them. And we ended up fixing, because I sat down with the production guys and I said, what is the dumbest thing you do all day? I was like, what is the stupidest thing that you do all day? What is the biggest?
Such a good question.
And it turned out that it was, I ended up making a Google extension on their visual AI, because it turns out the dumbest thing they did all day was, like, say they got an episode in, like, they got Empire or something in from the production, and the production would put in like blanks where the commercials should be, right? But they weren't telling them where they were. They just send the tape in. So they literally had PAs sitting there fast forwarding through or watching episodes so they could mark the timestamps of where the commercials were.
Oh, that is the dumbest thing.
And so we took the Google Visual AI is amazing. Like, it's even back then, it's probably even more amazing now. But we took like samples across a bunch of back catalog stuff and brought it down to, and this is not a joke, but it is a real number. We brought it down to like a certain amount of shades of gray. It was more than 50. And, and we figured out what the most likely ones were, and then taught it how to scan episodes, and got it so that it could run an episode through the visual AI and spit out the timestamps within, like, I think we got it down to like 2 minutes, and it could spit it out in a 3-frame accuracy. And that, like, I think is what most people don't understand. AI should not be used as taking over the world. AI should be used as, how can I use this to do the stupidest crap in my entire world so I can get back to the stuff that matters?
Yeah. And we do that in our homeschool. We lean flow our homeschool. For example, if they want to learn a thing, we enable them to go learn the thing. And it doesn't matter what it is. But nor am I going to make them suffer through a semester of the thing if they can learn the thing in 6 weeks.
Yep.
And so it doesn't make any sense for us anyway. Like I said, some people are recreating the whole school experience at home. We are creating a learning environment. So, for example, one of the credits you need in high school is health. Remember health, Kathy? Remember health?
Sucked.
Remember when you're just, it's all like drugs and pictures of genitalia with diseases on them.
Did you at any point show your children The Miracle of Life?
I don't know that I have.
Horrible, horrible movie that everybody makes us watch, which included footage of the birth.
Oh yeah.
Remember that? Where we all had to go down to the health classrooms that were by the band rooms and like they separated.
Yeah,
we all had to watch The Miracle of Life.
The Miracle of Life. Oh my goodness. I might have blocked that out. Anyways, The Miracle of Life. It is a miracle and it's great. My children have not seen that video. Although maybe they should. I don't know. Especially the youngest. She wants to be a midwife. But okay, so anyway, what I'm saying is, so my oldest had to do health.
Right.
And I was like, she's like, oh, health. I'm like, listen, you need it for your transcript. You have to have a health and nutrition. Actually, called health and nutrition.
She doesn't want to take health?
She's like, it's a soft science. I'm like, babe, just trust me. You need to know. I don't know why, but it's like, yes, you need to know about like eating healthy and how to avoid syphilis. I mean, I don't know, whatever.
Oh my God. If she's going to be a doctor, please have her learn about nutrition. And I say this as somebody who has been put through the ringer by the American medical system. Please have her go learn about nutrition. Like have her go learn about
Yeah. So anyways, I was like, so this is a semester long class, and here are there's a test after every chapter. There's fill in the blanks. It's all these things. There's this many essays and this many projects. And she's like, can I just do it? And I said, what do you mean? She's like, can I just do this textbook? And she did it in 6 weeks, and she learned a ton, and she really liked it actually. Right. There's a ton about nutrition. She's like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. But she did it all, and she did it all really well. She even did the project, and because it was like a make your own physical education, like exercise routine thing. And imagine if I had made her slog it out, doing only little portion things once a week, and you have to start in September and end in December. That doesn't make any sense. And like you were just saying, that's not how the world works. So why would I be teaching my kids an antiquated way? Or should I say to them, hey, are you interested in this? Even if it's an art thing. Somebody was interested in just art. It was my son, and he's like, oh, it would be really great if I had a light box. So he built a light box and then was doing art, and he like went through this phase where he was tracing things and then learning how to draw them, and he had his light box and the whole thing. And but it was like 6 weeks, and we still have the light box. But he's like, well, I learned that skill. I learned how to make a light box, trace some stuff, move on. And I was like, great, because the world is so fast. And I want you to go into a workplace and have the equivalent of, we need a light box. We're going to build one. We're going to learn the skill. We're going to move on and get to the next skill. Yeah.
I'll be super honest. Maybe I should have homeschooled as a kid. But I'll be super honest. Part of the reason that I ended up going into art, or that I started drawing, was I was literally just sitting in the back of classrooms bored. That. Yeah. And I clearly remember Mrs. Marzik, what up? I remember, you guys can't see her face, but I clearly remember sitting in the back of a history class one day and just drawing, and one kid got in trouble, and Ronnie was just like, Kathleen's not paying attention, and Mrs. Marzik being like, I already know Kathleen knows the answer. I remember even as a high schooler, I felt like being like, then can I just go? Like, that's the worst part.
Yeah, it's a waste of time.
It's a waste of time. And it goes one of two ways. As someone who spent a lot of time bored in high school, one, you don't care after a while. So like,
right.
Did I have a B+?
And that's such a tragedy.
Right. I mean, I had
It's
a
such
B
a
plus.
tragedy.
I was a B plus student all the way through simply because I knew to do just enough to stay off the radar. And then just amuse myself. And so after a while, you just stop caring about the system and you're not enthusiastic. And it actually took me a long time in the working world to realize I had to give a crap, because I'd just be like, it's fine. I realized I sort of disassociated from the system as a whole because I didn't care. Or you have a terrible attitude because you don't figure out enough to disassociate to survive. And then you're known as like the kid with potential, but who's a problem. And we all know that.
That's the worst. We all know that. And, there's enough adults, especially women, being late diagnosed with autism or ADHD or other learning. I wouldn't say that those two things are learning disabilities necessarily, because it's how your brain works, and you have really no control over that. But
it's neurodivergent is what they call it.
It's a neurodivergent thing. And so one reason I think that homeschooling, you say, oh, they're weird. It's not because of neurodivergence. It's because of the socialization, because they're used to being socialized with the family and then with other grown-ups, frankly. Yeah. And so when they get together with peers, they're like, dang, you guys are mean, because kids don't know how to be friends. Kids have to learn how to be friends. They have to learn how not to say the mean thing. Grown-ups are not going to be mean to a kid because we know. Right? We have the nuance, we have the maturity to treat someone to respect them and treat them like a normal human being. So my kids have absolutely no problem talking with grownups. They talk to peers and they're like, whoa, like so-and-so is wicked insecure. So-and-so is mean to me. Or,
yep.
And so when socialization is the biggest thing, I think, yes, but do you want your kid to be socialized by, do you want your 12-year-old socialized by all these other 12-year-olds? I mean, no. Have you met a 12-year-old? They're terrible. But I think it's important to know that homeschoolers are weird because they're not being conformed to one model and lifestyle. They're having a bunch of different experiences with a bunch of different people of all ages and all races and all educational backgrounds and all socioeconomical backgrounds. They are learning about the world and they're seeing the world. They're not just seeing a classroom with 20 other 12-year-olds in it, or 30 other 12-year-olds in it.
Yeah.
As the case is sometimes. And so they are much more apt to be mature and ready for the workplace in terms of how they're going to keep learning and contributing in a significant way. That's not all homeschoolers, but it is for a lot of them. A lot of homeschoolers have their own businesses. And they're making bank. And my homeschoolers are not making bank. They're reading. They're reading and they're hiding so that they can read some more. I'm like, so-and-so, I never do this to them, but I'm thinking there's always the homeschool family that looks perfect and everybody is in matching outfits and whatever. And we never have matching outfits because I don't sew. But my youngest decided she wanted to learn how to sew. So I found her someone. And so now she sews her own dresses and puts them in the fair and gets ribbons. And they're like, oh, did you teach her how to sew? I'm like, heck no, I outsourced that. I don't know how to sew. I'm not going to learn that. Find someone who does.
You want me to do online embroidery class? We can do online embroidery class. Fun fact about me, which is just how big of a black sheep I am. I was literally the hyperactive child who ended up being just left with her grandmother to learn crafts because I drove my mother berserk. So I genuinely do know how to embroider my own trousseau.
That's awesome. Actually, she did the other day. She just oh, did you see so-and-so's jeans? Can I learn how to embroider her jeans? Because that would be super cute. I'm like, oh, that would be cute. You should learn that. All right, now I know who.
You need heavier needles and heavier thread, but yes, I can direct you in the right place for your child.
See, look at me. I'm organizing a new learning module.
All you need is you just need some heavier needles. What is it called? A hoop for her And then honestly, if she can do iron-on patterns for her first couple, it'll make her life so much easier. We'll talk off the recording, and I'll send you materials.
But I just want to end with one thing. So if your child, I just want to say, if your child is doing well in the educational situation that they're in, that's fantastic. Keep them there. Go with it. If it's working for you, then you should keep doing it. If your child is in an educational situation and they are miserable and you are miserable and it is not working for you, you need to consider pulling your child out of whatever it is and finding something different. Because life is too short to be that miserable with education. And so there are ways, and you just need to take the step and to be courageous to find something that's going to work for your kid. And I know that for some people, it might be the loss of that system that's the hardest. For some people, it might be a financial thing that they have to change up their whole life. And there might be a sacrifice, but the parents that I know who changed up their educational situation in COVID because their kid was miserable, their kids are happy. They are thriving. Depression is gone. Anxiety is gone. They have new friends. They have new situations. Maybe they went to a charter school that focused on arts and theater. I mean, whatever. But it's worth at least having the conversation. Can we do something, or what would it look like if we did something different? And that might be homeschooling, but it might be some totally different thing. And like I said, there are places that you can assign your kid the work and someone else, makes sure that they do it. Like, that exists. So you might not have to leave your job to homeschool. You might be able to keep your job, but still be in charge of your kid's education because they're your child. And again, that's a philosophical difference. Like, who has the right to educate the child? And I do think that it's the parent, because they let you take your baby home from the hospital without a certification, because it's your baby. Like, so they don't make you like do parenting classes before you're allowed to leave with your newborn. It's your newborn, you leave with it. And so I feel like the same thing.
It might be a good idea to do parenting classes, but
oh man, we were like looking at each other like, they let us leave with this thing. We don't even know. But education is the same. You know your child better than anybody else. You know your kid. And you also maybe know yourself. And you're like, well, I don't think any parent would say, my kid's just going to have to suffer because I don't want to make those changes. Some people would. Some people would do that. But most of the times, the thing that you fear is not going to happen. It's not going to be as bad. It's not going to be as bad. And even your worst case scenario is never that bad. When a child suddenly finds an educational experience that is better for them and they're not miserable, everything changes for your whole life, your whole family. And maybe that is homeschooling, but maybe it's not. But I want to encourage any listener to take the jump to have the conversation. My kid is suffering. What if we switched up their education? Yeah. Because your kid is worth it. That life is worth so much. It is so important. And love looks different, and sometimes love does look like sacrifice, and that means changing your whole life so that your kid can have a better educational experience. That is an option, and it's not going to be all difficult. It might be really the best thing you've ever done. And there's so many different ways to homeschool. Not one homeschool looks like another homeschool. There's so many options, so much support online, in person, all the kind of things. You are not homeschooling in a bubble. And it can be a really rewarding experience. And honestly, the hardest things about homeschooling are not homeschool problems, they're parenting problems. So it's never like, oh, I can't find a curriculum that fits. We switch up curriculum all the time. When I have a problem, it's because I have a kid who won't do what I tell him to do. It's a parenting problem. It's not a homeschooling problem. So it's not that you can't homeschool. It's that you have a kid and you need to figure out the best way to love that kid so that they are happy and healthy and becoming the person that they are meant to be, the best the best kid that they are going to be, which is going to look different from the kid next door, different from the kid down the street. But that's your job. Whatever educational system they're in, it's your job to help your kid be the best kid that they can be. And for whatever reason, in this world we live in, the freedom of homeschooling enables you to have a lot more options to do that than some other things. So obviously I'm available for questions or queries or posers or who do you think you are?
But ask Meg, like let's not give out your personal information, but say if someone wanted to follow you on Instagram.
They could follow me on Instagram. I'm a riot.
I know your random car Instagrams often make my day.
Oh, good night.
So what is your Instagram handle and where can someone find you there?
Okay. I am at Meg Ebba, MEGEBBA on Instagram. And that's pretty much the primary place where I am on right now. I know that there are many other places and things, but that's all I got time for. I love to watch some Instagram reels and then I save them for my kids. And then we get together and I'm like, here are the things that you're going to watch this week. And they're wicked funny or they're slightly educational. I sneak in the educational ones and like little clips from TED Talks or like, oh, come on, show us the funny cat videos. I'm like, no, you're going to watch this clip from a TED Talk. But I make sure that there's cute octopuses and whatever, people falling down. But yeah, so Instagram is probably the best place. But also, you just Google homeschooling, and you're going to get 7 million options. So don't put homeschooling into a search engine. Don't do it. First, find out what homeschooling looks like where you live. For example, it's illegal in Germany. Sorry, Germany, no homeschooling for you. But if you're in Indiana, like I said, go to Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They have a map. Click on your state. A little thing comes up and tells you all of the laws and rules and regulations for your state. And then you get to figure out if that's going to work for you. But you need to start with the legal things, because please don't get arrested for homeschooling. If you're going to go down, don't go down for homeschooling. You know what I'm saying? Go down for something different. Don't let that be, where you so figure out what you have to do. And then there's going to be like a contact information, like, just then you can be like homeschooling in Muncie, Indiana. And there's going to be some woman who knows everything you need to know. And then you can hook up with her and she's going to give you the whole lowdown, and all her kids are going to be out of the house probably. And she's probably going to be almost a grandma. And she's going to be like, okay, listen, this is what you're going to do. So there is that resource, but first you have to find it locally. So you go country, state, local mom who knows the thing. So
and who knows, you might end up sitting in Meg's backyard.
You might end up in my backyard with me talking you off a ledge and having a great year and then keeping homeschooling or not, whatever works best for you. But homeschooling is awesome. Everybody should do it. But not if you don't want to, but you should. But you don't have to, but you totally should. But you
okay, so I think we should wrap up on that note, because do you realize we have accidentally been talking for almost 2 hours?
I did notice that, but it feels like 5 minutes because it's so awesome to talk to you.
And I apologize to everyone who got annoyed by the fact that we did diverge at certain points into New Hampshire stories. But okay, yeah,
we can edit that out.
Nah, leave it in. It's fine. They can learn. They can learn things like the fact that New Hampshire still is the only state that does not have a seatbelt law, which is still crazy town. I think at this point it's just a point of pride.
Yeah, we don't have helmets either. Don't need a helmet.
There's no motorcycle helmet law, and the joy of, and this is a real town. We're not making this name up. Dixville Notch, where the 17 voters.
First in the nation, baby. First in the nation.
So for those of you that are not American, there is a primary voting system in the U.S. for president in New Hampshire. Right, wrong, indifferent, whatever, for some reason, has always been the first state to vote in that primary election. It's a whole thing that is just...
It's so hysterical. Like if another state's like, oh no, we're going to do it before, we'll move our date so that we're first.
Yes.
And the first town,
Arizona tried
the
it.
first town,
Yeah.
the first town who votes is in northern New Hampshire, and it's Dixville Notch. There's 8 people in the town. 8 people live there, and if they get up at like 2 a.m. so that they can be the first of the nation to vote, and it's the most ridiculous thing. I love it. Okay, anyways.
So just so everybody knows, there are between 8 and 17, because I thought they got to double digits at one point, but maybe somebody passed. Legal voters. There's more than 8 people in the town. It's
sorry, you're right. Legal voters. Sorry about that.
Okay, on that note of madness, I think we're going to wrap up for now, because otherwise we will just keep going. And eventually Meg does have to go.
We will.
Meg does have to go retrieve her child from that swimming pool that we allowed her to go to an hour and a half ago.
So here's my little Post-it. So I said, oh, sure, go ahead. But I have no idea like where she's going or who's bringing her back. It could be me. But since we don't have phones for our kids, I actually don't know. I hope she comes back eventually.
You really are raising 90s children. You're raising 90s children. That's what we did. We used to just go out and come back when the sun came down.
Right. We're fine. We're fine.
We're fine. Okay, on that note, we're going to wrap up because we are terrible and we'll go for hours. So thank you, Meg. If you would like to follow Meg and ask her homeschool questions, you can find her on Instagram at Meg Ebba, MEGEBBA. And I think we should stop now. So have a good day, guys, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.